Basically, what I'm going to do is just to update you on what has been happening within the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. As some of you may know, the Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association coordinates the Kimberley Process Civil Society Coalition in Zimbabwe. We are the leading organization panyaya dzeKimberley Process. Kana tichitaura nyaya dzeKimberley Process tiri kutaura nyaya dzemadiamonds. Inyaya dzekutengeswa kwengoda zviri pamutemo. Saka seorganization tisu tinoongorora kuti zviri kuitwa ngemwazvo here, mitemo yakadzikwa neKimberley Process iri kuteedzerwa here muZimbabwe. Saka ndo mandate yatinayo se-civil society organization. We work with community-based groups dziri based kuMarange. For example, there is Chiadzwa Community Development Trust who do a lot of monitoring work kuMarange. Then there are also other groups that are part of the coalition from a civil society perspective. These groups include the Center for Natural Resources Governance, CRD, Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, he works with Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. Then we also have organizations like NANGO, National Association of Non-Governmental Organizations. We have Counseling Services Unit. We also have Women's Coalition. The other organization is ZELA, obviously. So what we do is to generate reports from Marange and give these reports to the Kimberley Process. But for the purposes of this meeting, I have to explain what the Kimberley Process is all about, because it has a lot of implications in terms of the revenue we are generating as a country. And we are also concerned about where that money is going, how that money is being used, because it's a huge chunk. Some of you may know or may have read that Zimbabwe has potential to contribute between 25 to 30% of world production. Although those figures have not yet been verified independently and also by government through exploration and an understanding of the geological makeup of the Marange diamonds, there is need for government actually to work on this, to make sure kuti tinenge tichiziva kuti Marange iri rich zvakadini tisati tanegotiate contracts. Makazwa vakanyenze vachitaura kuti waziti wakanyenze zviya vachiti contracts yanga iri RBZ yavanga vachitaura vachiti vanga vakuda kusaina contract vasingazivi kuti minerals avainayo ari muZimbabwe akamira sei. In fact, it was truly cool, huh? Yeah. So that's quite important as well. And I think that is what also happened even Kumarange. Government does not have the data. So let me not waste time on those issues. What the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme is all about. This is an international certification scheme. Why we are saying certification scheme is because diamonds are always accompanied by a certificate. Yatinoti parcel yema diamonds. Pamwe ngari 15, 20 or so ma pieces ema diamonds. Ka parcel kane 15 or 20 ma diamonds. Kanopuwa certificate. Rekuratidza kuti ma diamonds ava kuMarange. Nyaya yekutracer kuona kuti panofanirwa kuitwa verification so that we eliminate atinoti ma-conflict diamonds. Conflict diamonds, ma-diamonds anenge achibva kunzvimbo dziya dzine hondo, kune vanhu vanenge vapandukira hurumende. Ati munozwa zvikura DRC, people are fighting over my natural resources. They are fighting over tin, tungsten, nana iron, nema diamonds. So this is a major problem. So it's basically making sure that we trace where the minerals are coming from. And that is the role of civil society as well, including the international community. So the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme was established in 2003 to eliminate trade and export of conflict diamonds. And conflict diamonds, Muchingezi, are defined as rough diamonds used by rebel movements or their allies to finance conflict aimed at undermining legitimate governments. So that's quite important. So, do explanation iripo kana kuti iri munera tinoti Kimberley process document kana ravanoti founding document of the Kimberley process. Now, you might have heard a former minister of mines. I understand now he has been posted to the transport portfolio, Minister Mpofu, saying Zimbabwe has satisfied all the Kimberley process minimum requirements. I'm sure most of you have heard him saying that on a number of occasions. And fighting civil society, myself, Farai, is he in? Not yet. So, he has been saying we have satisfied all the minimum requirements. I'm sure in your mind you are wondering what are those minimum requirements. He never got to explain what those minimum requirements are. And I'm sure most of you who have not attended some of the meetings that we normally organize have not even understood what we mean by minimum requirements. I just have to explain that now. Anonzi ma minimum requirements acho anonzi akasetwa neZimbabwe. Tinoati mu language ye Kimberley process ma internal control standards kana kuti ma minimum standards. Anonzi ma internal control standards. Ma internal control standards ekuti ma diamonds atengese kuti nyika inzi itengese ma diamonds include the following. The first one is to make sure that each shipment, each parcel of my diamonds is accompanied by a certificate, a Kimberley process certificate. This certificate is issued by MMCZ, Minerals Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe. That's the issuing authority. Saka ese anofanirwa kunge achiissuwa ne-Minerals Marketing Authority. Saka paya paanozoendeswa kuairport kana kuti through any other means anoexportwa kuendeswa kune dzimwe nyika, rimwe narimwe rinofanirwa kunge rine that identity certificate iyoyo is very important. So that's a minimum requirement. Saka zvainzi Zimbabwe yakasatisfy izvozvo. Then the second one is every country that produces diamonds, right, should also develop mitemo legislation, should enact legislation related to the trade of diamonds, and this is quite important. So that is one of our fights with the Ministry of Mines. We were saying you don't have an adequate legislative framework to regulate the trade and export of diamonds. Yes, the Precious Stones Trade Act is there, but it is not adequate. And that is what has been leading to these problems of smuggling, leakages of diamonds. If you remember, there was a pilot who was arrested at Harare International Airport with a set of stones. I think they weighed more than 13, was it 13 carats? I think it was more than that, in fact, or some kgs, I can't remember, in terms of kilograms. And he was saying kuti achitaurira ma customs officials kuti matombo atikuda kushandisa mundege is a pilot from Israel, which was a lie. But they managed to apprehend him and brought him to the courts. Although he was acquitted, we were not happy about the acquittal, though, because he's part of a syndicate. Because the diamond sector, by the way, is pervaded by crooks. The diamond sector is normally controlled by family businesses. Most of these people are connected. So you may find one family controlling the diamond sector in Zimbabwe, And then the relatives of that family could be in Mozambique, Lebanon, Dubai, and so forth. So it's a network. So that's what we have to know. So tracing all that is very important in the diamond value chain. So governments are also encouraged to maintain relevant official production data of how much has been produced by each company. If it is Marange, for example, we would want to know how much in terms of diamonds were produced by Mbada Diamonds, how much were produced by Angie per month or even per day. That information is very critical. And by the way, the Kimberley process has got all that information, including myself. I've seen the data of how much is produced at each mine. But the problem within the Kimberley process is some of the information is not made public. It is there on their website, but there are two sections to the website. One section is for members of the Kimberley process, like myself, who have passwords. And the other section is for the general public, people like you, who can also access it. But on the public website section, you cannot access the finer details. That is the problem. So you find there is certain information that I may know, but I will not be able to tell you that information because of the issue of confidentiality. So that is the problem. And as civil society, we have been saying there is need for governments to make sure that the Kimberley process itself is transparent and bring out this information into the public domain so that people get to know what exactly is being produced and what exactly has been sold. So that's another important aspect. Right, one other requirement, minimum requirement of the Kimberley process is that all cash purchases of rough diamonds, kana tichiti rough diamonds, tenge tichitaura diamonds asina kukatwa, asati apolishwa, asati aiswa kana pamaring, handiti, right? Saka, these are called rough diamonds. So all cash purchases of rough diamonds should be routed through the bank channels. But because tinonzwa hurumende yedu ichiti tiri ku fight against sanctions, there is no way we can transfer our money through the official banking system, right? And that creates a lot of problems in terms of transparency and accountability, right? So that's an issue that we would encourage government to make sure that all cash purchases of rough diamonds are routed through official banking channels, right? All diamond mines in any producing country should be licensed. ASM company are cooperator, Komarange, Kananana River Range, and all those other areas where diamonds are found should be registered. That's in terms of the Kimberley process. That's another minimum requirement. So every producing government has to satisfy that in order for it to be compliant with the Kimberley process certification scheme. This would also include even prospecting companies. They are supposed to be registered. They are supposed to be monitored as well in terms of what exactly they are doing. But what we have observed in areas like Marange, especially in the past 2-3 years, is there are certain areas. These are areas where some unregistered people who don't have licenses, would illegally dig for diamonds. So that is illegal, and you are supposed to apply for a license if one is involved. Then also, all buyers and sellers of diamonds must be registered. That's another requirement of the Kimberley process. Now, let me come to one important aspect about what has been happening within the Kimberley process and where we are now. Where we are. Because Zimbabwe made some progress in terms of complying with the Kimberley process. In 2012 in Washington, D.C., the Kimberley process lifted the measures on Zimbabwe so that Zimbabwe could freely trade the diamonds. And this was done through what is called a communique that was adopted on the 30th of November 2012. The communique, some of the elements in the communique that the KPCS, Kimberley Process Certification Scheme, resolved to lift the KP special measures that were adopted in 2011, so Zimbabwe can trade freely. Then the Kimberley process also appreciated Zimbabwe's reiterated willingness to ensure that the KP civil society coalition representatives in Zimbabwe continue to have access to Marange. And that's very important because it protects the role of civil society in terms of monitoring. So we are bound actually by the Kimberley process and that communique to visit Marange. So at any time we can even write a letter to say we want to visit Marange to the responsible government Minister of Mines. So that provision is very important in terms of access to Marange. But we haven't done that as yet because we had a lot of disturbances earlier this year, elections and all the uncertainty. So I'm sure anytime we should be able to write a letter to say we want to visit Marange and see what's happening in the mines. And that's quite important. Then the other point is the communique also emphasizes that Zimbabwe should maintain the best practices that developed in 2012, including facilitating engagement amongst government, industry, and civil society with respect to the monitoring activities in Marange. So this means the KP is encouraging engagement and discussions amongst various stakeholders. This also includes community groups to make sure that we understand the situation, we discuss the situation, and we give solutions. Then the other aspect is around the development of what is called a diamond policy and diamond-related legislation. At the moment, Zimbabwe has got scattered legislation on diamond mining, but it is not comprehensive. So as civil society organizations, we have been calling for the development of a diamond-related legislation. And this is one of our recommendations as a monitoring group that was actually included in a communique that was adopted by the KP, because we make presentations to the KP. So that's an important one. Now, what the communique also says is it actually agreed that Zimbabwe should sit in some of the groups or thematic groups that are within the KP. For example, what is called the monitoring group in the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. The monitoring group is responsible for peer reviewing what is happening in the diamond sector in any specific country. So that monitoring component is very important. You may be aware that at one point Zimbabwe was subjected to I think more than 3 review visits. Kimberley process certification luminaries coming to Zimbabwe, and then government officials panicking in Marange, trying to make sure that everything is in order because of fear of this group. The group is led by the European Union, and the EU has done tremendous work in terms of promoting the monitoring activities, and even here in Zimbabwe, and making sure that there is movement in terms of civil society participation, community participation, participation in, by industry and government. So briefly, that's about the Kimberley process. Now I would like to invite my friend Farai Magu just to give an outline of some of the challenges within the Kimberley process, because there are a lot of challenges. I appear to have painted a rosy picture of the Kimberley process, but there are a lot of challenges. On that note, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will